What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right. So we know the subject of this video was the $1 billion that Eddie Hearn and DAZN deal, $1 billion deal that was struck between Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing and DAZN. And what I'm going to do is a little exercise. I've already done the exercise and I know how it works out with the information that is available. And uh and as usual, man, as soon as Eddie Hearn said $1 billion and I read two articles on this, I was like, okay, Eddie Hearn is right. Just like he said in the one talk that he's a salesman. That's what he is. He's a mouthpiece, he's a salesman. And life is just a stage, right? You get on the stage and you throw big numbers out, you talk big money, and hey, man, when you say big numbers, people get excited and people come swimming to big numbers because they love the glitz and the glamour, don't they? Don't they? Obviously, they do. But I had a political science professor one time says, son, the A is in the details. Or as Anthony Joshua says, the devil's in the details. So, with the details that we have, let's look through this deal and see what it pans out to be from the details that we know. So, and my conclusion is that this is definitely not a this is not a deal in the United States that is going to have Showtime is going to have HBO or Showtime shaking in their boots. And it's not a deal that is really going to allow them to make fights where you have two highly competitive, top-notch fighters fighting on this platform. And I'll go through the numbers. Okay? Now, before I do that, and this is not me hating on Eddie Hearn. I'm trying to do this as neutral as I can. I don't like Eddie Hearn because Eddie Hearn lies too much. And I've gone through this, but this is just showmanship. This is a good piece of showmanship. And for anybody that wants to have, somebody tries to sell them something, like, if you're trying to buy a used car or you're trying to buy something and somebody comes with you with a number that sounds really, really great, you know what I mean? Like, we'll give you up to, like, what's that car? What do they say for cars? We'll give you up to $3,000 on any of your used car towards a purchase of a new one. Right? So that sounds exciting. Oh, you'll give me up to $3,000 towards my purchase for this beater I've got in my garage? Yes, we'll give you up to $3,000. Now I put a pause in there where that up to, because it means that they're not going to give you any more than $3,000 for your car. It doesn't mean that they're going to give you $3,000. It means that they're not going to give you any more than $3,000, if $3,000. So most likely you're going to get $3,000 or less. Right? That's what that means. But when a lot of people hear that, when it comes from a bright set of teeth and a nice suit and closely cropped hair and a big showroom on a commercial on TV, when you couldn't get to work because your car broke down, sounds like a great deal. But when he says up to, he means up to. He doesn't mean more than or at the least. He means no more than, up to. And those are the devils in the details when you listen to people that you should look for. Those little words like may. Not will, may. Not will, may. Not must, should. Those are subtle words. There's a lot of UK people that think, that we don't speak very good, we don't speak English very well, and we don't understand what we read. I do. I understand very clearly what I read. I make a living reading and telling people explaining to people what I'm reading means, so that they don't wind up get into a situation where they agree to something that they never intended to agree on. So when I listen to what Eddie Hearn says, I'm going to go off what they say and then break it all the way down to what it means. Now, before I do that, please, I hope that you'll accept my invitation to attend the live stream that I'm going to do later this morning. And the best way to know about it is to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can get notified of when it's going to be, because I don't do it at a certain set time. Also, thank you to everybody that donates to the cause, because we've raised money for youth sports program, and it really helps. The super chats, the Venmo, the Patreon, all that stuff really, really, really helps. So thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope, and also I put, obviously I put ads in these videos, so and I know they can kind of be rattling sometimes, but hey man, that's how the revenue is generated. So thank you very much for listening to the videos. We really, really, really appreciate it. Now, let me get on to this, and I'm gonna read you two things, okay? And first of all, I did a video yesterday where I talked about this transatlantic. I'm not gonna get into his terrible choice of words in transatlantic deal and the way he described it. That might be me being a little sensitive, but hey man, sometimes you got to worry about, you got to know what you're saying. You know what I mean? And phrase it in a way where you don't offend people. That's part of being a good salesman. But let's read over this Ring magazine article, which is very well written by Mike Coppinger, that came out before the announcement. And it had some details which were confirmed by the announcement. Eddie Hearn is throwing his hat into the U.S. streaming arms race. The British promoter's American initiative, Matchroom Boxing USA, is set to announce Thursday in New York a major streaming partnership with fledgling service. It's a fledgling service, DAZN. Multiple sources with knowledge of the deal told The Ring. It's a 4-year deal with a 4-year option. And the plan calls for Matchroom to stream 40 fights per year. 16 of those will be staged in the U.S., with the other 24 taking place in the U.K., where Hearn resides as the most prominent promoter in the market. Got it? Got that? Now, it says the next one says each fight card Matchroom U.S. streams is expected to carry a 7-figure license fee, which will ostensibly allow DAZN to compete with HBO, Showtime, and ESPN. Okay? License fee. So let's see. Let's go through this $1 billion. And 7 figures is and by the way, listen to this word. Each fight Matchroom Boxing streams is expected to carry a 7-figure license fee. Not will carry a 7-figure license fee, but is expected to carry a 7-figure licensing fee. How do you know on a streaming service what the licensing fee is going to be? Is it front loaded? Is it back loaded? Is the license fee dependent upon the number of people that viewed, the people that watched it? So you get a license fee per viewer, per subscriber. More than likely, it's going to be per subscriber. But that's just what I believe. But we don't know. But let's go off the numbers that we're given. So Eddie Hearn comes out and labels it a $1 billion deal, right? And as we can see in Showtime, it's not in Showtime, on BoxingScene.com, they refer to it as a $1 billion 8-year deal. Now, 4-year deal with a 4-year option is not an 8-year deal. It's a 4-year deal with an option to enter into another 4-year at the end of 4 years. That's what an option is. An option is not a current, it's not an existing agreement. It is the right to enter into a second agreement with some of the terms already set, which means that that's really in the benefit of DAZN, where DAZN can say, all right, this deal went great for 4 years. I want to continue. And I want to continue under the same setup that we have. And Matchroom says, yeah, okay, but how much can we, I want to change this price, whatever. But I won't get into those deals. For the sake of knowing what the deal is, though, it's a $1 billion 8-year deal then becomes a $500 million 4-year deal. The best way that you can chop it up without knowing the facts, but because there are no numbers for the second deal. Right now, expected to carry a 7 licensing fee. So, what's the $1 billion? The $1 billion gets cut to $500 million because it's a 4-year deal. It could be up to $1 billion, right? If it lasted 8 years. But this is only a 4-year deal. So let's take that down to $500 million for that deal. Still a very big number, right? Now, 125, but where are the fights going to be held? There's 40 cards, right? 16 in the US, 24 in the UK. So for the US, you're only getting 40% of that. You're getting 40% of that $50 million. And we, like I said, $50 million deal. That doesn't mean that that's all going to be money that gets spent on fighters. They could be talking about the amount of revenue that's being generated. More than likely, they expect to generate that revenue. So be clear, at this point in time, there's no reason to believe that DAZN is going to give $1 billion in cash. Because if they pay that, the deal had to be way bigger than $1 billion because they have to be expecting something back. So we're still talking about revenue here. Money brought in by the fights, paid for by the fans, right? So you have only 40% of the fights are going to be held in the US. So of the money they expect to earn in this deal, you have $125 million expected to be earned from the fans, off the fans for fights in the United States, right? For those 16 cards. So that's $1.25 million for 16 cards. If you take 1.6 and you divide that by 16, you get $3,125,000 per card in profit, right? Or in revenue, not in profit, in revenue, because this is what this deal is. It's $1 billion deal. It's what they expect to get out of it, $1 billion, right? Which is really 500,000 because it's not 500 million. It's not an 8-year deal. It's a 4-year deal. So at 40%, so what are you going to pay the fighters? If you make 40% of that is cost directly to the fighters, okay? So you got to pay the venue, right? You got to pay the venue. You got to pay Matchroom. You got to pay the distributors. Yeah, whatever you got to do, whatever all those costs associated with them. If all those costs, and I'm using Eddie Hearn's calculation that Eddie Hearn used when he talked about Deontay Wilder's thing not being 100 million, because if you take everything away, it winds up being 40 or 50. He basically said 40% of that can go to the fighters. That's Eddie Hearn, to the purses for the fighters of the gross, right? So 40% of that 3.25, I believe, is 1.25 is 1. Right. So of the 50 million over 16 fights at 3.125 million per fight. And 40% towards the fighters is $1.25 million in purses per fight. $1.25 million per fight. Averaged. You can't get arrow spins for $1.25 million, man. They already get that. Oh, excuse me. That's for both fighters. So if you have a purse bid and you just say you have a 75-25 split, you have a 75-25 split for the fighters. That's times 0.75. That means you get 937,000 for the big guy, and for the small, and you get the rest. The $150,000 fight for the secondary guy. How are those whopping numbers? Why would that shake? Why would that shake Showtime? Showtime in a fight in a card that they put on, and they're putting on 16 fights a year. They got $40 million a year that they're spending on fighters. They had a fight on Showtime where all three guys got $1 million. Four of the guys. Well, no, three of the guys got $1 million a fight. Jamal Charlo made $1 million. I believe he made $1 million, or right about $1 million. Adrian Bronner made over $1 million, and Gervonta Davis made close to $1 million. All of those on the same fight card in the Barclays Center. What's the issue? How is this just going to get American fighters just to run over there to Eddie Hearn? Now, also note that this is the word that was in this other sentence here. Expected to pay. How are you going to get paid? Are you going to get paid on the number of people that buy DAZN? $20 extra DAZN for fights that have to be mismatches? If these numbers that he gave are correct, at a high level, admittedly at a high level, it breaks down to about $1.25 million a fight card for 16 fight cards. What are you going to have half of them be garbage and get one big one? Or are you going to have all of them be mid-range fighters? I mean, Rasheed Warren, hey man, boom, Rasheed Warren, you can get Rasheed Warren. You can get, I'm sure Guillermo Rigondeaux takes, $700,000, $800,000 a fight. But how in the world are you going to get, I mean, why would Sean Porter be jumping at that? Why would Errol Spence give up his own promotional company to come sign with you? Why would the Charlos do that? And by the way, the Charlos were already on record saying, hey man, that they didn't think that that the money's not there. To go to a fledgling streaming company whose application is not very good. Now, what the deal does seem to be good for is for the UK. This deal could help him out a lot, I suppose, in the UK, because number one, there's a little more. You can probably get more out of domestic level fighters over there in the UK out of this. It might help you sign fighters. It might help you take some fighters from Frank Warren. But, man, and please note also that Danny Jacobs, that this is not, Anthony Joshua is not fighting on this streaming system. Anthony Joshua is not going to fight on that. Anthony Joshua would take an entire year worth of their money. He takes 6 fights worth just to pay him his money. He's going to be pay-per-view, right? Look, man, this is a charade, and it was a charade. And it's not a bad deal. I mean, it is an outlet, but I'm telling you, man, if something seems too good to be true, most times it isn't. Most times it is. Not every time, but most times. Like my wife, I thought was too good to be true. She was true. But this, come on, man, this is not some deal where nobody's going to be able to compete with you when you got $1.5 million, you got roughly $1.25 million per fight. These are small fights. $3 million. If you were going to average in revenue a $3 million fight for the money that they expect to do small, medium fights in the U.S. And I'm not making it up. It's one, and that's using his numbers. Even if you thought it was a billion over 8 years, that's still 500. That's still 125 million dollars a year that they expect to earn. Not that DAZN is going to give you that. They said is expected to carry a 7-figure licensing fee. 1,250,000 is 7 figures last time I checked. Right? So that's what it is, man. It's what it is. Anyway, y'all keep believing Eddie, man, but sometimes just listen to the numbers and know that it's Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn lies. And he exaggerates. He's a salesman. That's what he says he is, and that's what he did. He sold you something. And with that, I'm out. Peace.